The sixth edition of the Women's 100 is only 5 days away, and we've got plenty to talk about when it comes to the tournament. Of course, we've got Jeet Vachirajani joining us like always. Excited for the tournament, Jeet. Again, fresh off a T20 World Cup, a fantastic test match, to be honest, at the Lords once again, and now the 100. So, yeah, a lot of good things to look forward to when it comes to women's cricket.
Yeah, at least one of the leagues that I look forward to. I'm sure, I mean, most of the people are not a fan of the kind of format that this particular league has got, but I still feel it's something quite different than what you generally get to watch. It has got its own set of tactics that are, at least I personally enjoy this. It's probably those 30 to 35 days that I am just locked in with the television, and yeah, a league that I look forward to now, with of course the Indian franchise owners also kind of coming in and taking the ownership in the particular league. So I think it's going to be interesting. Not sure how some of the teams are probably going to go, but yeah, we'll probably get into that later on.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be really interesting because this is, of course, going to be the first ever edition for the Indian owners who've come in. So, what we've seen, three Indian owners sort of representing the 100 when you look at the Delhi Capitals, who've now sort of bought over Hampshire, and which is why Southern Brave will now be owned by them. And then there's the Manchester Super Giants who come in from the IPL. And there's My London, who, of course, will be a part of the Mumbai Indians franchise. And you can already see, some of those connections being made over here because when you look at someone like a Southern Brave, you see Lizelle, you see Laura Wolfart, you see Jemima Rodriguez, all of them were a part of the Delhi Capitals. Similarly, when you look at My London, their two preseason signings were Mealy Kerr and Hayley Matthews. No surprises there. And even outside that, when if you really want to sort of draw some parallels, you look at a team like a Welsh Fire that is going to be coached by Michael Klinger, who also was the coach of the Gujarat Giants side. Sophie Devine, Georgia Wareham coming in. You can see why familiarity in some sense would have played a role there. So it'll be very interesting to see how it actually pans out in extremely different conditions, because those squads were built keeping India in mind, the subcontinent in mind. But this is, of course, England that we're talking about. It is the English summer. It's been brutal out there. So it'll be very, very fascinating to see how it plays out this time around. But talking about the squads, of course, we are here to preview each of the 8 teams. Today, though, we will be talking about 4 teams, and then we'll say for part 2 of the preview. So please, first of all, make sure that you've hit the like button if you haven't already. Make sure you've subscribed to Women's Cricket Central if you haven't already. And also, please do check out Jeet Vachirajani on X. And of course, after part 1, part 2 will be on Sunday. And then, of course, the tournament starts on Tuesday, if I'm not wrong. Let's just cut down to the chase, Jeet. We will go alphabetically. So starting off with the Birmingham Phoenix, captained by Elise Perry. Excited with what you've seen them in terms of the squad, Jeet?
The squad, I would say, yeah, definitely it's better. But with Birmingham Phoenix, I always ask as to how have they not end up lifting even a single trophy in all these years? Because each time you pretty much look at the squad and they look fairly decent. I won't say they are the best each time, but it still looks fairly decent. So you'd expect them, to be in the top cream of the competition. But I still feel, it's been quite underwhelming for them right from the beginning. I think they started off pretty decently when the 100 started, finished
Yep.
fifth. Then they finished, sorry, they started off finishing third in the first season, then fourth. But the last 3 seasons has seen a massive drop off, finishing eighth, which is last in 2023, and then second last in 2024 and 2025. So, as compared to the squads that they had, I still feel this squad is slightly better. But yeah, again, it's probably my personal choice, but I was really surprised that Elise Perry continues to lead the side. Not that she's bad, but I still feel that tactically, she has seen a massive downfall over the last few years, including in the WBBL as well. So under her leadership as well, the Birmingham Phoenix are able to finish seventh in the last 2 seasons each. So the fact that they are willing to continue with her also comes as a bit of a surprise. I get the experience and everything, I get that factor, but I still feel they could have looked at some of the other options or looked to blood some of the new players like Alice Capsey, and it could have probably worked out better for them.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up the captaincy bit, because that's something I was saving for later when we probably came to a side like the Trent Rockets, who've actually named Ash Gardner as the captain ahead of national skipper Nat Silverbrandt. What do you make of calls like these where you see overseas players being named captain ahead of local players? Because we've seen in the WPL each of the 4 titles being won by a domestic captain, and even in the 100 last year we saw Holly Armitage and Georgia Adams being the two captains taking the sides to the final. When you see that, and then you see Birmingham Phoenix, like you mentioned, there is someone like an Alice Capsey they could have looked at. There was also someone like an Emma Lamb if they really wanted to sort of go to a domestic option, or Tammy Beaumont if they wanted someone experienced. So interesting, right? When you look at overseas captains in leagues like these.
It does. It perplexes me each time. And this is not only, restricted to this particular league. I've seen that globally. And I've been a big fan of having domestic players lead the particular franchise of that particular nation, because they have better knowledge of the local players. They know how to utilize them to the best of their ability. So I've always been a big fan of having domestic leaders. Overseas, yeah, I mean, some of them probably can be made an exception, somebody like Meg Lanning, but I think that's probably the only name that really comes to my mind. Otherwise, I wouldn't want any of the other overseas captains to be leading any franchise, in the league that's away from their home. So over here, also, it's quite surprising. I think some of the names that you took do make sense, right? I mean, somebody like Tammy Beaumont has led before. She's led England in the T20Is. She's led Welsh Fire as well. So she has the experience. She's tactically fairly astute as well as leader. So somebody that I at least potentially would have gone to as my first choice over Elise Perry. Yeah. Otherwise, I think this season, I think we are seeing most of the sides being led by the overseas individuals. So not a big fan of it, but yeah, I don't know how they are looking at it. Maybe just going by names, maybe just going by the experience. Tough to tell.
Yeah, tough to tell indeed. But talking about the Birmingham Phoenix, though, before the auction began, when it came to the preseason retentions and signings, they had 4 players in their kitty: Alice Capsey, Lauren Filer, Elise Perry, and Lucy Hamilton. Firstly, I felt that was a very, very strong performance from them. Those were 4 gun players who covered different suits and ticked different boxes. In Lauren Filer and Lucy Hamilton, they had 2 excellent bowling options. In Elise Perry, Alice Capsey, they had 2 more than decent batting options. And then, of course, Elise Perry could offer value with the ball. And then you had someone like an Alice Capsey, a very X Factor oriented domestic option too. So excited with that. And the way they've built on from there, Jeet. Again, talking about the squad now, what excites you the most? And of course, what scares you the most?
I'm just happy with the top order that they may potentially field, because I think it's been an issue that they've had for a long
Yeah.
time now. Even the last season, they didn't really do so well. I mean, their top order was the worst in terms of the batting average. Even in terms of getting off to quick starts, nobody was able to put their hand up. The only 2 batters who had a decent strike rate last season was Georgia Wall and Emma Lamb. Besides those 2 names, everybody struggled, including Elise Perry. Elise Perry herself hasn't had a strike rate of over 100 in the last 2 seasons in the power play. So this time, at least, they've looked to fix it. The best part of it all, I personally feel, has been bringing back Davina Perrin to the Birmingham franchise. That's where she started, by the way. And also,
Yeah.
it's her home county team as well, playing and representing Warwickshire side. So you know that you're going to get intent with her. You know you're going to get fast starts. We saw what she did last season with that cracking 100 that she got. Probably, I think that was at Leeds. But it's somebody that you can bank upon, to give you those quick starts, to find those boundaries. And then I am not sure whom they are going to pair up with, because this is where there could be a bit of a conundrum, because they've got too many options to bat in the top order. So whether they go to Emma Lamb, they go to Alice Capsey, they go to Tammy Beaumont, I'm not sure. But irrespective of whom they go for, I still feel that the top order this time around is going to look a lot more better than what it did previously. So you should be able to see that impact coming in the in the batting power play.
Yeah, 100%. Because from the likes of Amy Jones, Stir Carlos, Caris Pavley to now having the likes of Alice Capsey, Davina Perrin, Tammy Beaumont, I think it is an upgrade for sure. And then, of course, when you look slightly lower down the order, it's 2 aggressive finishers and Annie Dirksen, Kayla Reinaka, and of course, who will eventually be substituted by Fatima Sana after the first couple of games. I feel it's a very exciting batting lineup. The top order looks very good because it's a very nice mix of youth and experience. Tammy Beaumont and Elise Perry, I mean, arguably 2 of the most experienced batters when you look at the auction or when you look at names you want to consider. Then there is, of course, the youth of Davina Perrin. There's also someone like an Alice Capsey, who's very young. Of course, she's got the experience of nearly 200 T20s under her belt, but she's still, 20, 21 years old. So that also works in her favor. There's someone like an Emma Lamb who can sort of play the role of that dynamic anchor for them. And then, of course, 2 finishers in Annie Dirksen, Kayla Reinaka, or Fatima Sana, however you look at it. So, very solid batting lineup. Maybe if you really want to nitpick and say, I would say, yeah, left-handers, maybe the lack of it will hurt them. But again, that is a very common feature in most women's cricket sides. So, you can't really look at that. But talking about the bowling now, Jeet, Lindsay Smith, Lauren Filer, Alana King, that's again a very, very nice eclectic mix, because Lucy Hamilton, of course, would have been a part of it. Not that won't be the case, unfortunately, this season. She's been ruled out. Or it's once again, a very nice mix of players that they've got there.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Much better mix. Good, they've got a good variety as well. That is there at their disposal. So last season, I think that was another talking point. The kind of spin attack that they had picked. I felt there was just too much pressure on 2 young wrist spinners. First of all, as a wrist spinner, you know that you're going to struggle for control. It's tough, and it comes with experience. And when you don't have that experience, as Hannah Baker did or Amelie Taylor did, that struggle is going to come for those particular two bowlers. So last season, that exact thing happened. It didn't really pan out so well. Not questioning the talent, but it was just too much. I mean, the entire spin attack depended upon these two spinners. So quite rightly, spin figures for the Birmingham Phoenix last year didn't really go well. So the Pacers, of course, averaged just around 20, but the spinners averaged over 30. So this time around, at least, with the addition of Lindsay Smith, it could change. There is Alana King as well, and they've got the off-spin option of Alice Capsey if they want to go to Emma Lamb as well. Pace attack as well has slightly improved. The X factor of Lauren Filers there. They've got the experience of Eva Gray as well. I'm not sure whether they're on ball or not, but I still feel there is a chance that Aneri Dirksen also will roll her arm over. Elise Perry will also roll her arm over. So as support pacers, they are fairly decent as well. So the overall look of their bowling attack looks much better than what it did previously. So something to definitely look forward to. Yeah, it's just probably the backup options where I'm not sure how it's going to go, because Phoebe Brett, I think, was an outstanding finding for Birmingham Phoenix last time around. I believe she just came in as an injury replacement at the fag end of the tournament, but in the couple of games that she played, she was phenomenal. So it's good to see Birmingham Phoenix, stick with her and get her back into the side. Evo Neal is perhaps an interesting choice that they made, a name that I didn't really see coming. But again, a very young wrist spinner who represents Sussex. Personally, I'm not a big fan of her, but it's a very young career, so I don't really want to judge. But as a backup option to Alana King, I don't think it's probably bad, right? You get to learn from one of the best wrist spinners, so it's going to be a good learning experience for her. But otherwise, yeah, pretty pleased with how the bowling attack looks here.
Yeah, it's a very competent looking side. And to be honest, Phoebe Brett was another name that I really wanted to try and squeeze in, especially after Lucy Hamilton's injury. But once again, I think they've done a good job of not just constructing their first 11, but also sort of, the way they went about their replacements. Fatima Sana was the name. They signed for Lucy Hamilton. Again, there's a lot of bias coming in, firstly, because you want to see players like Fatima Sana get more exposure at the world's best tournament, simply because they'll have a lot of positive network externalities, and that's what we want. When players like Fatima Sana get such experience, they'll go back home and they'll share it, and it'll sort of lead to some positive improvement. So I wanted that, but that bias aside as well, I think Fatima Sana deservedly gets the 100 gig, and very happy for that. But apart from that too, when you look at the way the auction went about for them, they were in fact the side with the fewest losing bids, so to say, for players. So it was very clear that this was, most of the names at least were part of their plan is. In fact, they lost only 3 players throughout the auction, Sarah Glenn, Nicola Carey being part of them. So once again, interesting that there weren't too many names they missed out on, but you can see even the names that they missed out on. Sarah Glenn, you could see where they were coming from. Alana King came in much later, so probably they wanted a domestic wrist spinner and then potentially look at someone like an Evo Neal as her backup, which would have made even more sense. Paige Schofield was another name they missed out on. They went really hard at her. They went up to 110,000. And once they missed out on Paige Schofield, Emma Lamb sort of became the next name they went after, and that was the player they brought in. I'm not going to say they're like for like, but you can see domestic middle order batter. Once they missed out on Paige Schofield, they knew who they had to go move on to, and you could make sense of what they were trying to do, and that is more important for someone like me. It's not just about the squads; it's the way you go about building them. And I was very pleased with how clean and how clear they seem to be with their auction strategy too. So overall, again, bias aside, I truly believe that this is a Birmingham Phoenix side that is worth contending for the title. But like Jeet said, I have been bitten way too many times from them. In fact, even last year I had them as part of my qualifying 3 teams, and they finished 7th, and which is why I also want to be slightly more cautiously optimistic about their chances. But Jeet, chances aside, again, overall, when you look at the squad, you do want to believe that this is a top squad.
Yeah, potentially. But I mean, the one thing that I've learned over these 4 or 5 seasons is that the strongest team or a good looking squad doesn't necessarily end up performing well, because a lot, of course, comes down to the tactics. And I think that is one area that has always remained a concern in women's cricket in general in any competition. I feel the 100 is perhaps the top when it comes to the usage of tactics. It's been too questionable with what most of the franchises do. But squad wise, yeah, fairly decent. A lot more experience, I would say, in terms of some of the acquisitions that they've been able to make. So they should be able to do better. I don't know whether they will be able to lift the title or not. It's probably too early for me to say. But yeah, still definitely an upgrade as compared to what they had in the last 2 seasons. So it's a positive.
Yeah, positive for sure. Let's see what Ali Maiden, the coach, has to do with the squad. Of course, last time around, you can at least give him the benefit of doubt by saying that it was his first ever season with them, so he would have needed some time getting used to the management, the players, and whatnot. But this time around, he's gotten a chance to build a squad from scratch, so build a squad that he could call his own. So yeah, let's see what he does with the squad. And of course, I do personally believe once again they're very strong contenders to finishing in the top three. So let's see what happens with them. Last bit though, of course, playing 11. Jeet, once again, I do feel that a lot of names pick themselves around too many questions to be asked in terms of who plays where. But yeah, what is your playing 11 for the Birmingham Phoenix?
They have a lot of top order options, as I just mentioned. There is Ravina Perrin, Emma Lamb, Tammy Beaumont, Elise Perry, Alice Capsey, Aneri Dirksen bats number 3 for South Africa. So, whom are the final top three that they go for is a big question mark. I personally feel they'll go ahead with. Look, Davina Perrin is a lock. She has to open. So, that one spot is not even under question. I
Yeah.
feel they'll probably go with Emma Lamb. Yeah, there is a chance for Tammy Beaumont, but I'm just going for Emma Lamb over here, given what she was able to do as an opener last season, one of the few bright spots that Birmingham had. So I'm not sure if they would want to change that one bright spot that they had. So I've gone with Tammy Beaumont at number 3. Elise Perry falls down to number 4. Alice Capsey at number 5. Aneri Dirksen at number 6. Kayla Renica at number 7 for the first two games, and then will be replaced by Fatima Sana at the same spot. Then I've gone ahead with Eva Gray at number 8, Alana King at number 9, Lindsay Smith at number 10, and Lauren Filer at number 11. Now, over here with this 11, of course, the question is who keeps the wickets, and I feel it has to be Tammy Beaumont. Jemima Spence, too good a talent, probably should be starting as well in the 11, but there is just no place because the kind of number 6 to number 11 that they've got, it's very hard to squeeze in Jemima Spence in that particular side. So they will probably have to leave her out, which means Tammy Beaumont is going to keep the wickets.
Interesting choice that when you look at the top order, but after having heard your top order, I can see why that makes sense because someone like a Tammy Beaumont, we know her struggles versus the new ball, and that is something that probably can be negated by sort of slotting her in at number 3. It'll sort of ensure she doesn't have to face a lot of it. Davina Perrin, I agree with you as a lock. Emma Lamb has shown that she's got the chops, and I feel she's a lot more technically competent too. It does mean dropping Elise Perry at 4, but yeah, that's the role she plays for Australia any which way, so I don't think it should be much of a concern. And the rest of the lineup is the same as yours. Alice Capsey at 5, and then Dirksen and Fatima Sana or Kayla Renaka, and the rest of them follow. So yeah, fair enough, I guess. So I agree with the 11. The 11 players for sure. The combination is where I had something else in mind, but I do like the look of your 11 too because it makes a lot more sense. Let's see what they actually do, of course, come the first game for them this season. Next up, though, let's talk about London Spirit, yet another side that comes in with a very strong WPL connection. Now, not in terms of ownership, but in terms of the coaching staff and everything, because it has a very strong RCB influence. There's Mo Boba, there's Andy Fla, there's Malulan Rangarajan, there's Dinesh Karthik. All of them associated with the men's side when it comes to RCB, but Malolan Rangarajan, of course, was also the coach of the title-winning RCB women's team this time around. And you could see Grace Harris, Nadine Leclerc, two players that they really went after, bringing them back in once again. And even some of the bids that they made, you could sort of connect the dots there. So understandable once again, but in terms of their preseason signings too, you could see what names they were looking for. You could see what they were trying to do. Charlie Dean, of course, was a lock for them. The skipper. Mahika God was another name they signed from Manchester Originals. Grace Harris was one of their retentions. And Marizan Karp, of course, moved away from the river, from, of course, Oval Invincibles, now called My London, and came back to London Spirit. That was a move I was very surprised with, not because of the caliber of the player. We've been talking about all these connections. Southern Brave, Delhi Capitals, she's been a part of the side for so long. I really thought it's sort of a deal done and dusted that she will be a part of the Southern Brave. But for some reason, that fell through and she's joined the London Spirit. But that aside, of course, Jeet, initial thoughts on the squad, on the way they've gone about their business. Happy with what you've seen?
Look, London Spirit, I feel that have been one of the teams who has had a decent squad in every season so far. Yes, maybe even this squad is an upgrade to what they've had previously, but the squad, the kind of balance that they've had previously, at least for me, has never been a question, irrespective of the management that has kind of handled it. It's just, how they kind of make use of the squad and optimize the kind of resources that they've got where, they've kind of lagged behind a lot. But that seems to have changed over the last couple of years as well. Of course, a couple of seasons they end up winning the 100. Last season, I still felt there were quite a few issues, but despite those issues, they end up finishing third in the group in the points table. So okay squad or with an average squad also, I mean, they can still perform. And that average squad was again purely because some of their key players got injured, so they were not available. So the replacements had to come in, and those replacements perhaps were not the best replacements that they could have had. So despite that, they were able to squeeze the best out of them and still finish third. So it's not been a big question for me. I would still say it's an upgrade irrespectively. We have seen, some of the kind of planning that has gone behind, certain selections, certain spots. and I've been really impressed by some of the names that they've actually ended up going for. Karis Paley is a name that I've rated really highly and somebody that I expected to fetch a lot of bucks, and she did, and I could see why. So I think quite a few good picks. Still feel that the spin attack is slightly weaker than what it was before. Look, first of all, last season the spin attack averaged over 30, and despite averaging over 30, I'm saying the spin attack has still degraded this season. So I think that could still be a concern because from having Sarah Glenn, Charlie Knott, Rebecca Tyson, and Charlie Dean, they've gone to Josie Groves, Lucy Ham, Karis Pavley, and Charlie Dean. Now, all these names are pretty good. They're all talented. Josie Groves, I love Josie Groves. I know what Lucy Ham is capable of. I know how good Pavley is. And Dean, of course, remains a common factor across these two seasons. But, as a unit, I'm still not convinced about how they're going to perform. I still feel the spin attack is going to end up averaging worse than what they did last time around. So
Ooh.
that still remains to be seen because Charlie Dean, we know the kind of talent that she possesses, but when it comes to the 100, taking wickets has been a
Yeah.
struggle for her throughout. Even her career average with the ball in the 100 is over 30. And same for the last two seasons as well. She has averaged over 30, 31 with a pretty high economy as well. So she has not really been able to convert that talent into performances for her side. So how she goes will perhaps determine how the spin attack performs. If she has a terrific season, then of course numbers are going to look much better. But otherwise, yeah, still a decent squad for them.
Yeah, that's something that they would want to be very wary about because, yeah, their home venue is the Lords, a surface that is tend to sort of aid spinners or slower bowlers in general a lot more. So if your spinners aren't doing well on surfaces that are supposed to be conducive, then it becomes a lot more trickier for you. And I do agree with you in some sense. They are an inversion of Birmingham Phoenix, wherein when you look at the squad, it doesn't really count for much, but they've somehow managed to punch above their weight, and it's been the opposite for the Phoenix, like we discussed earlier. But all in all, when you look at some of the overseas signings as well, Deandra Doughton, Nadine Declerc, Grace Harris, on paper, more than decent signings. But we know Deandra Doughton, Nadine Declerc, both of them actually had very, very subpar World Cups. Grace Harris herself hasn't had a lot of game time. How do you look at that then? Because based on current form, there's not a lot to look at.
Yeah, I think this has been one of my big question marks with the London Spirit over the years. It's their overseas picks. They have been fairly questionable. Yeah, even if I cast my thoughts back to last season, I mean, Georgia Redmayne is, with all due respect, not a name that you'd probably fancy in the
True,
T20
true.
format of the game, let alone for the 100, which is even shorter. And it did bode well for them because she ended up with a terrible strike rate, a terrible average. And then they went for Charlie Knott, who, despite all the talent, I don't think is the best T20 player to have in the side. So it's still decent as compared to what they had previously. I would still say Harris was the saving grace for them last season because she was able to make a huge impact in the middle phase and at the death phase. I know she's probably somebody that you can bank upon as an opener. But Marzan Cap, like you said, Deandra Doughton, Nadine de Klerk, all three with the bat, you don't know what you're going to get out of them. It's tough to say how they're going to perform, but luckily, with some of the domestic names that they've got who will be batting around them, I still feel it should probably work out just about fine for them. But yeah, form is a bit of concern. The talent isn't, but yeah, let's see how the team performs in conjunction.
I mean, we've spoken a lot about their batting, but arguably it's the bowling that we'll have to focus a bit more on. You spoke about the spin attack, and that's not looking too great for them. When you look at the pace attack as well, it's primarily filled with pacers. I mean, with pace bowling all rounders. The one frontline pacer that they had signed, Mahika Gaur, unfortunately has been ruled out of the tournament. They signed Katie George as her replacement, which further depletes their pace attack in some sense. And apart from that, Phoebe Turner also has been ruled out of the tournament, and they signed the Scottish Hannah Rainey. So that's another reinforcement when it comes to the pace attack. But all in all, when you look at the pace attack, Jeet, Maizan Kaab, Deandra Doughton, Nadine de Klerk, Hannah Rainey, Katie George, again, what do you make of that?
Look, with Micah Gore, I still felt that, with her presence in the squad, I still felt their pace attack was an upgrade from last season. Because last season they had an Izzy Wong, they had Tara Norris, they
Yeah.
had Eva Gray, and I think one game was played by Kate Kopak. So as compared to that quartet, I still felt, the kind of pace attack that they have for this season is a massive upgrade. So Marizan Cap can be banked upon. Micah Gore, yes, she's ruled out unfortunately, but yeah, it's going to affect their overall performance because I think it was a great opening duo to have. Marizan Cap from one end and then Micah Gore from the other end. Using those slow factor at Lords would have been really big, but without her also, I still feel it's still an upgrade. The pace attack is still much better than what it was last season. Marzan Cap, of course, Lord is going to ride upon her. but Nadine de Klerk will have to step up. The World Cup was not the best for her. Phoebe Turner is ruled out as well, so that's probably out of question as well. Katie George, I don't see her bowling so much. At best, she'll be a support pacer as a left arm pacer. Besides that, I think Trudy Johnson is a name that they could look at. She has been one of the most informed pacers in the women's T20 blast, so that's a name that they can perhaps go to. Hannah Rainey had a decent T20 World Cup. She's been doing all right for Yorkshire as well, but not too sure about how it's really going to convert over here. Right now, the challenge is who takes the new ball alongside Marzan Cap, and there is literally no other option that they can go to, unless if they are somehow willing to risk a Katie George new ball. Then I don't know, but otherwise, I feel Trudy Johnson is made for that particular role. So if they somehow manage to squeeze her into the side, then I think it's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, well, let's just talk about the 11 then, Jeet, because you spoke about them having to somehow squeezing someone like a Judy Johnson into the 11. And I don't see how that happens because they have a plethora of pace bowling all rounders, but they'll also have to ensure that they've got enough spin options as well. And that's where the conundrum is, right? Like, do you go ahead with a spinner or do you go ahead with an additional pacer? But that aside, let's talk about the 11, starting from Grace Harris. How does it look for you?
Yeah, so Grace Harris, like you mentioned, is a lock-in. I've gone for Marie Kelly as the opener to partner up with her. A few options here and there that they had, but I feel Marie Kelly has done a decent job over the years. I think she has had decent last season as well, and she has the reputation of being an aggressive opener in the domestic circuit. So I would still bank upon her to come good as an opener alongside Grace Harris. Two players just going gung-ho in the power play is not a bad option to have. Number three, again, it's really tough to kind of come up with playing 11 or batting order or know what they're going to do. But I've gone ahead with Amy Jones at number three. I think that's where she started for England as well before the T20 World Cup started. And she gave glimpses of what she can do at that particular spot. So I've gone ahead with Amy Jones at number three. At number four, I've gone ahead with Pavley, aggressive option. She's been doing phenomenally well over the last few games that she has played. Very unfortunate to miss out last season for the Birmingham Phoenix due to an injury. I felt her absence made a huge impact on how Birmingham end up performing. For London, at least we know that she's fit and fine and completely 100% to go with both the facets of the game. So I've gone ahead with her at number four. I've gone ahead with Marzan Cap at number five. Deanna Doughton has to go at number six. There's otherwise no other space, where she can perhaps slot in. So I'm going with Deanna Doughton at number six. Nadine de Klerk at number seven, which means he'll have Doughton and de Klerk doing the finishing job for them. Then I've gone ahead with Katie George. Now, Katie George is somebody who's been batting at number three, and lately she's also open for Warwickshire in the domestic circuit. But in this particular side, it's really tough to fit her up top. So she has to, shift down as well. She's also someone who can do a pretty decent job as a finisher. So that trio of Doughton, de Klerk, and Katie George can be a really good trio to have at the back end of the innings. Then I've gone ahead with Charlie Dean. Josie Groves at number 10. And number 11 is a spot that I still feel is up for grabs, because if the London Spirit want to add an extra spinner, then they've got the talented Lucy Haim to go for. But if they want to add a frontline pacer, which they are desperately missing, then I think Trudy Johnson is somebody that they'll probably opt for.
Fair enough. And that's why probably I still am leaning slightly more towards Lucy Haim, because I do feel that they would be better off ensuring that they have enough spin options available in the 11. I'm not sure to what extent would they want to depend on someone like a Grace Harris, and it does help that Lucy Ham again is someone I also personally like what I'd seen over last season too. So it'll be interesting to see. That essentially is the one spot that they would want to properly deliberate on. I feel most of the other players pick themselves. I still do believe that Amy Jones might open with Grace Harris. This is just based on what I heard off of the videos that London Spirit put out, some of their typical preseason auction strategy and all of that. It was very clear how highly they rated Amy Jones and how badly they wanted her. So based on that, I want to believe that they have a clear role in mind. And if I think of a clear role for Amy Jones, then it has to be somewhere at the top. So number 3 is also a fair shot, but I think she might open for them. But it'll be interesting to see. Apart from that, of course, the 11, I don't think there's a lot to sort of deliberate on. So that's that from London Spirit in terms of predictions. Once again, we aren't doing too much of that because it'll be hard for us. This is going to be a first season, after the inaugural edition where each of the teams have sort of done a clean reset and they are starting from scratch. So we will need at least a season to understand what tactics are each of the teams trying to deploy, what sort of player combinations are they looking at. So right now we're sort of just throwing shots in the dark. Let's see how many of them stick, and then based on that, we'll be a lot more, or we'll have a lot more clarity on how to go about things. But speaking of clarity, Jeet, one thing that we can assure the next side doesn't have is probably a lot of clarity. No offense to them. It is the Manchester Super Giants. The butt of all jokes is what you will call the sister franchise at the IPL, the Lucknow Super Giants. And in some sense, the trend seems to continue over here at the 100 too.
It does. This is the one franchise historically, even before the Super Giants was took over. Manchester Originals in general, from season one have been one of the worst teams for me to watch because there has been so much to really difficult to understand, and it has come right down to the auction itself. Like what they do at the auction, the kind of players that they pick, or the kind of conditions that they have at their home ground at the Old Trafford, it has never made sense. Last season, we saw they went ahead with Beth Mooney. They went ahead with Millie Kerr. How do you think in your top order, Beth Mooney and Millie Kerr are going to board at the Old Trafford? You need a
See, in their heads, they thought we also have Deandra Doughton, so she alone might probably do, take a bulk of the responsibility and do everything. Unfortunately,
No.
wasn't to be the case. But yeah, I share your humor, I share your sentiments, to be honest. But it is what it
Uh,
is. It is what it is.
so yeah, they had these two options in the top order, which again probably not the ideal batters to have in the top order when you know that power play becomes really important at a venue which is historically known to be really slow. So they have never really looked to improve upon that. This season, at least, I feel there have been a few decent acquisitions that they've made. They've got Meg Lanning coming in. They've got Smriti Mandana. So at least the opening bit, or at least the top order, looks a lot more decent as compared to the previous season. So otherwise, yeah, I would still say, when I look at the overall squad, yes, it's better than what they've had previously, but I still feel, some of the issues just continue. I mean, they one thing that they've had previously is a lack of wrist spinner. I think they went a season or two without having a single wrist spinner in the squad, up front when the 100 began. Then they got in Amanda Jade Wellington. Then there was Daniel Gregory who was involved. Then Millie Kerr, of course, was involved as well last season. So this season, again, it's back to square one. No wrist spinner at all in the side. So I'm not sure how they are confident with the kind of bowling attack that they've assembled. Spin attack still looks decent. So maybe it's fine to not have a wrist spinner when you've got the likes of Sophie Eccleston, Maddie Villiers. But I still feel, in a shorter format of the game, it's at least good to have the option. Whether you play that wrist spinner or not is up to you. It depends upon the conditions or the opposition that you play. But at least having the option open, because we are talking about a squad of 16 to 17 players. And if you cannot have one of the slots that you are having accommodated to a wrist spinner, then I think you're missing the trick at a home venue like Old Trafford. So it still continues to be, one of my beefs with this particular franchise. But yeah, slightly better, I would say, marginal improvement as compared to the previous seasons.
It's interesting when you look at the top order as well. You spoke about Smriti and Meg Lanning, but the name that actually excites me the most is Grace Crivens. I really hope she has a good season this time around because last season for Trent Rockets was she had a very torrid time, and she's in much better form now heading into the season, and I really hope that she does well for them. But when you look at the bowling as well, sure you can argue that Sophie Eccleston, Maddie Villiers, they're two very good spinners, no doubt. But we spoke about London Spirit, how they could consider a fourth spinner because it's the Lords and everything. Similarly, Old Trafford is known to sort of be a lot more slow bowler friendly. Let me just put it that way. And given that, and having just two spin options in your 11 and arguably in your squad itself, like how do you look at that? Like having just two spinners at the Old Trafford, do you think that is that's still fine? That's something they can make do with considering the pace attack and the way it sort of shapes up?
No, it's never fine. No, at least playing at the Old Trafford, having just two spinners in your squad is not ideal. So, of course, I do expect Grace Crivens to be the third spinner. She's going to roll her arm over as well. But yeah, it's just a lack of options. I mean, what happens if somebody has niggle on a given day? What do you do?
Yeah.
Sophie Eccleston wakes up. She's not feeling 100%. What do you do? You've got no other options in your side. You're screwed. So, I just don't understand, how this franchises operates. And it's a new ownership, of course. But yeah, it's not ideal. Even the pace attack, looks a bit weird to me. I know, I mean, some of the pacers are in form, but I'm still not entirely convinced with what they've really come up with. And look, it's just that it's not that you don't have the options in the domestic circuit. There are plethora of options. There are so many wrist spinners to go to. There are so many finger spinners. I still cannot wrap my head around how Hannah Jones misses out on a 100 contract. And not to forget, she plays for Lancashire, which is, of course, the home ground at the Old Trafford. So it just doesn't make sense. You had that option as well. If you Don't play her, that's fine, but at least have her in the squad as a backup option to Sophie Eccleston. Not happening again. So I don't know what's going to happen. God forbid, but if something happens to Sophie Eccleston on a given day, if she's not 100%, I feel the side is screwed on that particular day. They'll probably not have any other spin options. They'll just have Maddie Villiers to go to a few balls from Grace Crivens, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it.
I mean, at least on paper, they do have some backups. But once again, Sophie Eccleston, Maddie Villiers, and then there's a massive gulf. And then you look at someone like a Rebecca Tyson. Joe Gardner, of course, sure. She was also a starting member last season too. So you can expect her to fill in should there ever be a case for it. But once again, it's hard to squeeze her in. If you want to bring her into the 11, then who goes out? Because almost each of the first 11 members pick themselves. And that's where, Jeet, I wanted to understand. Maitland Brown, very interesting pick, right? Pace bowling all rounder. She's got the chop. She's done fairly decently, to be honest. No discredit to her. But again, not the name that you would probably sort of think of off the top of your head when you're, looking at overseas options for your side.
I think there has been a fascination of pace all rounders in women's cricket, especially those from Australia. So it's not something that really surprises me. She has been a part of the 100 previously as well. And I think, one of the things that perhaps worked in her favor is the fact that she has played the English domestic season. She played the 50 overs in particularly for Surrey, but she has the experience of playing over here. So whether there were better options or not, potentially, at the end of the day, she's still a decent addition to have somebody who has really worked on her control a lot more, because probably 5 or 6 years ago, she was somebody who had the pace, but it was misdirected pace. So that discipline is something that she has worked on at the expense of losing a bit of pace. So she's doing a fine job, as a pacer taking the new ball. And as a batter, I felt that 3 years ago, Sydney Sixers just decided to chuck her in at number one and opened her under Charlotte Edwards. That never really made sense. Yes, she has the ability to strike it cleanly, but she was not really ready a few years back. But now that game is improving. She's getting a lot more consistent and she's hitting the ball well. She's having a decent impact down the order as well, when she has to look for quick runs for any of the side that she represents. So not a bad option to have, maybe a few better choices, but yeah, I don't really have any issues with the addition of Maitland Brown.
Yeah, to be honest, what probably perturbs me even more is the fact that they ended the auction with the highest purse remaining. They had nearly £70,000 in their kitty. And that's why it makes you wonder. You had that much money left, one. You could have gone. There were so many options in hindsight, of course, that they could have considered, that they could have probably bought with whatever money they had left. But again, unfortunately, they probably had, sort of allocated more money to some of the players that they got in cheap. Richa Ghosh was a base price pick. So maybe they expected more money there. Someone like a Grace Ballinger was probably a very hot property. Like, a lot of people were expecting her to get some bids. So fair enough. I mean, we can't argue much with it. But talking about the 11 now, Jeet, Manchester Super Giants, what I felt was it is a fairly easier 11 to pick in terms of the 11 names. It's sort of the order in which who comes where, who's opening, who's in the middle order, who's probably, the bowling options. That probably is a bit of a sort of, puzzle. But yeah, what's your 11 like for them?
Yeah, I think the top order itself is a bit of a question mark, because Grace Crivens likes to open the innings, but there is a
Yeah.
Smriti Mandhana as well. So is the management willing to have two left-handers up top? I personally don't really mind that. It doesn't really matter so much, but if they are willing to do that, then yeah, they can probably stick with Scrivens and Mandhana up top and have Meg Lanning at number three. Now, Lanning, of course, she's been in the UK for a while as well, playing for Lancashire, so she's used to these sort of conditions. But with Lanning also, there has been an issue. You can clearly see that lack of cricket gets to her at times, because the Meg Lanning when she played international cricket and the Meg Lanning that you see now, there is a stark difference in how she just approaches each and every delivery. So even in this particular blast season, in the first phase of 6 games, she scored 281 runs and she was looking gold. But in the second phase of 6 more games, she just scored 82 runs. And each time she struggled against a new ball. So whether this is something that will be a consideration for the Manchester Super Giants or not, I don't know. But if they have watched these blast games, and they probably know that she is getting dismissed to that early movement really quickly. So if they are willing to bat her at number three, which is where she used to bat for Australia as well and succeeded a lot, then I think they can go ahead with Grace Crivens as an opener, Smriti Mandhana to partner up with her, and then Meg Lanning at number three. Number four, again, I'm not really sure. I've gone out with Paige Schofield, a high price buy, but she has just lost her direction entirely. So if I personally had a choice to make, then I would not even start with Paige Schofield. She'll be benched. I'll be very clear about that, because she's that woefully out of form. Probably 5-6 months, she's finding it hard to even buy a run. The last season has been underwhelming as well, and she's just woefully out of touch. So, given the money spent behind her, if that becomes a factor, getting her aside, getting her a spot in this playing 11, then I don't know. But if not Pace Schofield, then at least I personally would have preferred to have Nat Vraith at number 4, another aggressive wicket-keeper batter, somebody who's used to batting at number 4, so it's not something completely alien
Yeah.
to her. Number 5, I have gone ahead with Catherine Bryce. Now, Catherine Bryce is, again, now with Catherine Bryce also, form is a big issue. And it's been an issue for a while. Yes, in the T20 World Cup, she did have a good performance against Ireland. But what followed thereafter was just failures out of failures with bat. And in the last season as well, with the bat, she's averaging just 12.7. With the ball, she's averaging 90.5. Yeah, so it's been a struggle for her in both these departments as well. It's been a concerning run of form for her as well. But you can't leave her out irrespectively. She's played for the Manchester before as well. So I'm
Yeah.
sticking with her number 5, irrespective of the form. Number 6, I've gone out with Richa Ghosh. Of course, she's going to keep the wickets as well, ahead of Nat Vraith. Number 7, I've gone ahead with Maitland Brown. Number 8, I've gone ahead with Maddie Villiers. Number 9 with Rihanna McDonald-Gay. Number 10, Sophie Eccleston. And I'm going to wrap it up with Grace Ballinger. Yeah, so of course I forgot that there is Bex Tyson as well as a backup to Sophie Eccleston, somebody who takes
Yeah.
a new ball as left-arm spinner, but she has to miss out. There is no spot for her. So yeah, Grace Ballinger probably at number 11.
Yeah, fair enough. Like we mentioned earlier, the 11 picks itself, they only have 3 backups any which ways outside that in Nat Faith, Bex Tyson, and of course Joe Gardner. So we don't see any of them starting for them. But apart from that, of course, maybe what I would want to consider is Catherine Bryce at 4 and Paige Schofield at 5. But because you mentioned that Pace has been so woefully out of form, they might as well just give her more batting time and sort of try and sort of bring her back to form. So they could consider that. And it isn't much of a difference any which ways. But that's where Manchester Super Giants are at. One last thing, though, of course, I don't think we spoke a lot about the pace bowling attack, and that's arguably one of the more brighter spots. Rihanna McDonald-Gay, Grace Ballinger, Maitland Brown, not the worst of attacks, and definitely a more than serviceable, sort of set of bowlers for them to work with, at least when it comes to pacers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely true. But again, I'm just concerned about the kind of utilization, because with Grace Ballinger, even previously, we have seen that, each time she takes a new ball, but her effectiveness is strictly restricted to post power play bowling. With the new ball, she gets decent movement, not a prodigious mover of the ball, but the impact is not quite there with the new ball. It's always after the power play where she excels with her cutters, when she uses the angle of going around the wicket, or when she has the wicket keeper standing up to the stump. So it's that new ball that still worries me. Maitland Brown is an option that they can go to, but even in the domestics in the 50 overs, her first spell was an issue. In each game, she bowled a first spell of 4 to 5 overs, but the wickets were really hard to come by. At best, a wicket, and she was turning out to be a little bit expensive as well. So I think Rihanna McDonald-Gay is going to hold the key to this particular side. She has been in a phenomenal form. At least for me, she's a leader of the pace attack when it comes to this particular side. Top wicket taker for Surrey. Not to forget Grace Ballinger, top wicket taker for the Blaze as well. So they've got 2 informed pacers in the particular side. Maitland Brown, of course, is an option. Catherine Bryce, not the best of the domestic seasons for her. As an option, I think Beth Langston also is somebody who has struggled. She has represented England, we know of her, but we know why she's not in the mix anymore. And again, she has been struggling a lot as well. So a decent backup option to have, but averaging 47.4 in the current ongoing blast season is perhaps not so positive for her, but still decent. But I still just feel that Rihanna McDonald-Gay is perhaps going to hold the key to this particular pace attack.
Yeah, fair enough. Like they keep saying, like the cliche goes, batters win your matches and bowlers win your tournaments. I personally don't agree with it, but let's just hope for Manchester Super Giants' sake, it actually works out and their bowlers are able to put their hands up. Speaking of the next side, though, it is my London, again, previously known as the Oval Invincibles for the uninitiated. Interesting choices, both in terms of what they went ahead with preseason and some of their auction buys as well. They are being coached by Lisa Keightley, who technically is, or rather was the coach of the defending champions. She led the Northern Superchargers to a title last season, but of course, she also made the move to My London because of the Mumbai Indians connect. They signed Neely Kerr, Hayley Matthews, and Danny Whitehorse preseason. They let go of each of their players. They refused to retain any of their players from last season, which was a tad bit surprising, to be honest. But that aside, Jeet, Initial thoughts on the squad. What have you made of it, and why are you so excited about them?
I still feel that it's a squad that's a bit of a degrade, as compared to the previous seasons, because I still feel the formerly Oval Invincibles has been that one team that's been really consistent over the years. Just one bad season, but otherwise they've done a very good job, across all the seasons in terms of how they've gone about the business under John Batty. I'm not sure how it's going to pan out this time around. I'm not really convinced with the look of the squad. Yes, Lisa Kitely won with Northern Superchargers as a coach. They've got Holly Armitage, who led the Northern Superchargers as well. So she's over here with My London and again leading this particular side. That again, I have to admit, is a good move. It's a very smart move having Holly lead the side. I think she's a terrific skipper, really smart with her tactics as well. Domestically, also, she has done a terrific job for Durham. So that's the one bright spot for me, perhaps the brightest spot in this particular side, which is just handing over the leadership to Holly Armitage. But otherwise, it's a bit of a mixed bag, I feel, because the overall balance of the squad still kind of concerns me. Of course, being My London, they have the base of Sare, so a few players are there, like KDR is there, Alice Monahan is there, Alexa Stonehouse, Kira Chatli, Danny Whitehodge, but still a few more gaps than what they had, previously. So I'm not entirely convinced with the look of the side.
Yeah, same here. The batting, especially, I'm sort of not sure what to make of it. The top order, Neeli Kerr has always been a bit of a red herring for me in this format, and by that I just mean the shortest format, T20s or 100 balls, whatever you want to look at. I don't think she's the greatest of top order batters to depend on. And then when you pair her with someone like a Danny Whitehodge, I mean, when I say pair, just in the top order. I know Danny is fresh off a fantastic World Cup, but it sort of does make me wonder how this top order will function. Nicola Carey is also a name that I personally have not been the biggest fan of, and I know I've said this off air to Jeet, but yeah, when it comes to batting and bowling, I personally am not very convinced of it. I still believe that there were other options available that they could have considered. Of course, we could see where they were coming from. She did really well for Mumbai Indians in the WPL, and again, a more than decent pace bowling all rounder. So you can see why they wanted her and they did pick her. But yeah, as a batting lineup, when you say Hayley Matthews, Danny Whitehodge, Neeli Kerr, Kira Chatley, Nicola Carey, Ollie Armitage, Chanel Henry, it's more miss than hit for me personally. But when you look at the bowling now, Jeet, Kirsty Gordon, Alexa Stonehouse, Chanel Henry, if you want to consider, and of course the two gun all rounders, then Hayley Matthews and Neeli Kerr. What do you make of it?
I'm personally like fairly happy with the kind of spin attack that they've got. A good variety, and I think all three experienced spinners, I
Yeah.
think, is a good blend to have. So Kirsty Gordon, of course, a left arm spinner, and then they've got Hayley Matthews and Millie Kerr. So I think that department is fairly sorted. Millie, of course, hasn't had the best of the run in this particular competition historically, but again, it's something that really doesn't matter so much. But a complete spin attack, it's pretty decent. Pace attack, I still feel could be a bit of a hit and miss because the pacers that they have assembled are like fairly inconsistent. Like they end up having quite a few bad days and good days, bit wavered as well in terms of how they go about things and can be really expensive. Alexa Stonehouse perhaps is the one name that really stands out to me. Somebody who has really worked a lot on getting her pace up, on working on her movement, because she was predominantly a pacer who used to swing the ball back into the right hand as a left arm pacer. Now she gets into jag away as well, and she has improved upon her pace as well. But Alice Monahan is the fastest pacer on the side, but there is that inconsistency. She's going to ball some absolute jaffas that are going to hit the top of off, but there'll be a lot of no balls, there'll be a lot of full tosses. So again, not something that really convinces me so much. Nicola Carey, again, somebody who provides value with the new ball. I can see, where that pick comes from. Again, like I mentioned, Lisa Kitely, non-superchargers. So there is Holly Armitage. There is Nicola Carey as well, who had represented Northern Superchargers last time. ADR as well. That is Alice Davidson Richards also comes to this particular side. So I think you can see that kind of shift in terms of the coach's priority. But yeah, again, Chanel Henry, we don't know what you're going to get out of her in terms of her fitness. That becomes a question. ADR is somebody that I'm not a fan of when it comes to the bowling bit. So the pace attack is something that really that really concerns me. But the spin attack is something that will have to, make up for whatever the pacers are able to do.
Once again, a very interesting group, but I would still have to agree with you on the fact that this squad is definitely degraded. When you consider what they had, at least when it comes to names and everything last season, sure, they didn't make it to the final three, but that was just the first time that happened to them. But letting go of the likes of Alice Capsey, Meg Lanning, Marizan Karp, and to some extent, even someone like a Rihanna McDonald, again, a very, very handy domestic pacer to sort of hold on to. So interesting that from such names they've sort of come to this. But speaking of the 11 itself for my London, Jeet, how does it shape up for you?
Their problem is again too many openers in the top five. Matthews is opening, Danny Watt, Hodge opens, Kira Chatley opens, Holly Armitage also opens for a domestic side. So somebody has to adjust. So I've gone ahead with Haley Matthews and Danny Watt, Hodge as the openers, perhaps a no-brainer, which means Kira Chatley will have to bat at number three. I put Millie Kerr at number four. Number five, I've gone ahead with Holly Armitage. Number six, I've gone ahead with Alice Davidson Richards. She also opened last season for Northern Superchargers, but there is just no place over here on this particular side. So she's going to bat at number six. Then I've got Janelle Henry, Nicola Carey, Alice Monahan, Alexa Stonehouse, and Kirsty Gordon at number 11. So, yeah, the good thing is all 11 can bat, but quite a few batters that are out of the positions that they prefer or have excelled at. So I think that's going to be a bit of a challenge. But yeah, that's what I've gone ahead with.
I've personally still stuck to Davidson Richards at the top. I've sort of slated her in at number three simply because of what you said. She opened for Northern Superchargers last year, so I do feel that they would want to try and slate her in at the top. Slot her in at the top. But that once again makes me wonder. You can't have Alice Davidson Richards and Millie Kerr at number three and number five. I don't think that'll work out really well for them. So, and especially because we're talking about Surrey, we're talking about the Kia Oval, a very batter-friendly surface where you would want your batters to keep scoring bounties and runs. And yeah, you can't have two batters who will really get stuck. And so that's where probably I do agree with Jeet and sort of try and split them apart, have Alice Davidson Richards bat lower. But I don't know if that actually solves their problems because I'm not sure if she's bowling fit. Last season she wasn't. I'm not expecting her to play a very big role with the ball this time around. And as just the batter batting at number six, is Alice Davidson Richards the best option out there? Personally, I don't think so, but it is what it is. Apart from that, the rest of them, of course, pick themselves. One name that I would want to consider is Tara Norris. You did have Alice Monahan. You spoke about how she's coming off a really good domestic season, but Tara Norris with the left arm angle is someone I would want to consider despite Alexa Stonehouse, simply because again, it's such a rare commodity that even if you have two of them, more often than not, it could work in your favor. But again, Alice Monahan, given the kind of form that she's coming in with, maybe in all likelihood she would be considered. But Alice Davidson Richards, is there any chance that they don't start with her potentially, or maybe let go of her, drop her after a few games if she's not doing well?
Yeah, they may potentially drop her if she doesn't perform, but she has to start. Like I mentioned, it's a home ground for her. She's familiar with these conditions, and for Surrey as well, she was opening, but it's not her best spot. She struggles as an opener. There is a lot of dot deliveries with a few boundaries in between, so you don't really want to put her in that number three with Millie Kerr also around there. So she has to start. She has to bat down the order. There is no other choice. So just put her in a position where she has to attack. So it has to be number six, number seven, number eight, whatever. So I won't be surprised if even Nicola Carey walks in ahead of her. She's far better. Chinel Henry, of course, a far better striker as well. So I won't be surprised if ADR ends up batting below Nicola Carey in this particular side, or even Chinel Henry. But yeah, she has to start. You have to go for experience. Somebody who has been bowling a bit as well. But yeah, again, personally, I'm not a big fan of that.
Yeah, fair enough. And to be honest, again, as long as they are flexible with their entry points and they are sort of aware of what the situations are, you wouldn't want to see someone like an Alice Davidson Richards walking in at the 13th or 14th over just because she's your number six batter. You would want to send in the likes of Nicola Carey and Chinel Henry ahead of her in such situations. But of course, it'll be interesting to see Lisa Kaiti, of course, like we spoke about earlier. She is, or rather was, the coach of the defending champions, the erstwhile Northern Superchargers, and currently Sunrisers Leeds, who she was leading earlier. So it'll be very fascinating to see how it works out for her here at the Kia Oval with a fresh squad, with a lot of new names, with a lot of interesting names. But anyways, that's that from this preview of the 100. And of course, we've spoken about four teams. We started off with Birmingham Phoenix. Then we spoke about the London Spirit. Then we went up north to the Manchester Supergiants. Came back to London talking about my London. And of course, the four teams that remain, we will be previewing them in part two of this, of course. And that comes on Sunday. The tournament starts on Tuesday, so you will have enough time to sort of go through this and understand which teams to look forward to, which not, and why I personally think Birmingham Phoenix versus Wildfire will be the 100 final. Until then, it's a goodbye from both of us. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like always, please make sure you've hit the like button. Make sure you've subscribed to us. Do follow Jeet Vachirajani on X as well. And we'll be back here very soon.